Pulaski County is local flavors. In normal times, underserved communities face barriers to accessing those local flavors. This presentation explores the concepts of a mobile food market as a long-term food access approach while addressing immediate COVID-19 needs. We know that underserved neighborhoods and the newly unemployed lack access to fresh, nutritionally dense, immune-boosting foods that help protect us in a time of a pandemic and nourish us during normal times. We know that accessibility is an issue. Low to moderate income households face barriers to accessing the traditional local food distribution channels. We know that affordability is an issue, that fresh foods, eating well, that are rich in vitamins and minerals are more expensive than packaged foods. And we recognize that economics have exacerbated existing health and nutrition needs due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We see the potential for a mobile food market to accelerate and amplify long-term food access through a financially sustainable model. This potential service model can reduce barriers to food access by distributing food directly in underserved neighborhoods at subsidized prices year-round. We think that it addresses the issue of the challenging macroeconomic conditions because we can leverage one-time COVID-19 recovery funds to enhance the local food economy broadly for low to moderate income folks, for donors, for farmers, and potentially producers of value-added products. And finally, this is a sustainable financial model. We can use it to leverage innovative business models and strategic capital expenditures to create recurring earned revenue that will sustain the program long-term beyond the COVID-19 or CARES Act project phase. The timing of implementing such an approach here recognizes two important macroeconomic trends. First, we have households that are in economic distress. Large-scale unemployment means the needs in LMI families and children will increase disproportionately. There will also be newly unemployed folks not previously accessing these types of services who will need them to mitigate the effects of this emergency. We also know that the recessionary conditions are going to strain foundation, government grants, and other corporate giving that's at the heart of supporting these type of response efforts in the nonprofit and public sector. Looking at how food is distributed across Pulaski County currently provides some insights to how this type of service could complement rather than duplicate in filling the service gaps. A variety of food distribution services already provide hot meals, donated retail food, meal pickup and delivery, and packaged weekend meal packs for Pulaski County's most economically vulnerable household. But missing are programs that provide fresh food sourced from local farmers and producers. We can see that there are food pantries at places like New River Community College and New River Community Action Agency, that Daily Bread provides hot lunches, that several organizations, including City of Refuge, Daily Bread, and various churches pick up from retail outlets such as Walmart, Food City, Food Lion, and distribute those as reclaimed food. We have mobile meal delivery through New River Valley Senior Services, and now the Pulaski County Public Schools School Nutrition Program. We have CSAs that have been implemented at Pulaski Grow, and then we have various K-12 meal backpack programs offered to middle school after school students through Beans and Rice Incorporated in Dublin at Dublin United Methodist Church, the Little Lambs, Jordan's Chapel, and various others at the different elementary schools. So where can we find some promising program models that help us think about this? Our friends in Roanoke from LEAP have created a integrated local food system that is trying to nurture a healthy local food economy. They've created a variety of complementary programs from their farmers markets that are located directly in underserved neighborhoods to their farm share program, to their mobile market that goes out to reach hard to reach neighborhoods who lack transportation or other ways to get to the local food farmers market. And then they've created complementary services like a community kitchen and an online marketplace. So we've looked extensively at how the mobile market is set up. There's a photo here that shows a box truck with a canopy and retail or merchandising bins where the produce can be slid into the truck. There are opening doors here that have a whiteboard on it where the items can be written, and then there's a station for weighing and electronic checkout of the produce for the consumer. This approach would target two primary markets: vulnerable community customers and full pay customers. And this reflects the earned revenue strategy that the one client market or customer segment would be the clients who pay subsidized market rates, and the other would be donor customers who pay market rates. Those in the vulnerable communities might include low to moderate income families, the newly unemployed, elderly, college students, etc. Whereas the full pay donor customers may include teachers, professionals, employed workers, higher ed faculty, etc. The vulnerable community market would be served through a funding subsidy system where the program could capture and keep local existing public food subsidy benefits such as S&P double value and WIC. At the same time, we would work to develop new funding streams for voucher incentives with foundations, sponsors, donors, and United Way to provide vouchers to specific target populations. These could be, for example, monthly vouchers that go to all Head Start families or all Medicare recipients. This would build durable long-term funding relationships that incentivize healthy food purchase and lower the cost for the LMI customer segment. At the same time, we would use this innovative earned revenue strategy to serve Pulaski County residents broadly. It's a way to adapt to the uncertain impaired public funding environment by creating more diverse earned revenue streams and not only depending on contributed support. We would use this to capture existing household spending from consumers motivated by a double bottom line, doing right while eating well. And we would be building long-term donor relationships that incentivize giving and buying local. This strategy is well aligned with the Comprehensive Plan 2030 in both economic development and community service goals. Because we're benefiting local foods by fostering a more sustainable, diverse local economy, we're enhancing the quality of life by encouraging and incentivizing locavore buying and giving. And we're creating access to new markets by providing local independent farmers a new potential consumer market. So how do we take this concept from an idea phase, from the drawing board and funding in the bank, to action, a truck on the road and public dollars out on the street? Normally, and at some point, we would look at creating a business model canvas to think through all the different options here. This would allow us to launch the most effective program that meets the needs at the right cost structure and having the right revenue in place. However, the present conditions require a less measured approach and a more pilot and iterate approach. So what we've begun doing is looking at some basic requirements of what would be needed to do to launch quickly to meet these immediate needs. These are unvalidated, low confidence figures at this point, but here's what we think the key startup cost might look like with a total preliminary estimate of $76,000. We need to have a capital outlay to acquire a box truck, either new or used. And then there needs to be some money put put towards custom fabrication, modifications, and wrapping of the outside. Because we would be purchasing goods to resell, there would need to be some funding, some working capital, seed capital to purchase those goods for the first year. And there would need to be working capital to provide the personnel costs for the first year. We would need to begin fundraising for subsidies or contributed support to provide for the underwritten costs. And so that money would be raised immediately from foundation private sources potentially, and that's not included in the startup cost here. Additionally, there would be direct service costs such as vehicle costs, fuel, service, and insurance, advertising, printing, and supplies that would come out of an operating budget once the program launched. So the sales and any other support that could be leveraged would help meet the other direct service costs. Again, these are unvalidated and low confidence figures at this point that require additional study. And so thinking about the future roadmap, what would be required next? What steps and goals are there? We see 8 key steps to launch this in a way that would help meet immediate COVID needs. One, we need to look more carefully at the cost estimates. We need to validate and refine the fixed asset and cost of goods sold assumptions. There are a variety of ways we can do that in terms of getting quotes and thinking through how much volume we might need to purchase during a pilot phase. We need to talk about and look further into the fixed asset acquisition, which would require sourcing and acquiring a box truck. There are 3 options, a new, used, or even a donated one, and it could be something that we can use temporarily for a time without the fabrication and modification. For example, using it to pick up and transport the food, but having some sort of pop-up tent and table system in the interim while we get the product out to market, and we're working on the more permanent vehicle. We need to recruit, select, and engage a vendor to complete the custom modifications and fabricate the interior fixtures. And we need to build a supply chain with the goal to source all food within a 100-mile radius. Fifth, we think we can put together a phased timeline with a pilot project and then leading to a full service launch on a longer timeline. We want to use that pilot phase to iterate and refine that business model canvas so that we're business modeling as we're learning. And 7th, we need to develop a brand kit, a story, a publicity kit, and launch some marketing and outreach both to potential customers and funders. And finally, there would need to be some fundraising, develop and launch a fundraising plan and sponsorship package so that we can create those healthy food incentive subsidies. So we would like to sit and talk with the county if this seems like a palatable option that fits the priorities about what type of iteration might be needed, what our next steps would be, and how we might engage stakeholders in a way that makes this project fit the CARES initiative model. It's important to note that in those conversations, there are some potential resources that Beans and Rice could tap during the pilot year or to support future expansion phases. For example, the already allocated annual funding request of $31,000 was done in a way that provided some more flexibility given our executive transition than years past where the request was tied to some very specific line items. It's more in line with still those same program initiatives, and this would potentially fit that as well to provide some of that additional support. Beans and Rice owns a commercial real estate property in downtown Pulaski with a book value of $225,000 and has about $45,000 equity in it. Our board has set a goal, if we're going to keep the property, that looking at additional ways to monetize that asset outside of commercial office space So for example, one wild idea is that the flat roof could be converted in some type of rooftop greenhouses that could produce some product for the mobile market and also create some type of workforce benefits for youth or young adults or underemployed or workers re-entering the workforce. And finally, the Launch Something Loan Fund, revolving loan fund, has capital that could be made available to local independent farmers as we try to build that supply chain so that we can increase the local dollar benefit here. Also, that discussion might involve looking at some of these points from this preliminary SWOT analysis. We're taking a critical look at our positioning, mapping out the mobile market's path toward the desired community impact by looking at our strengths and weaknesses, our internal organizational attributes, and then those opportunities and threats that are external current conditions. We see some obvious strengths in that Beans and Rice has experience and talent in doing this. Incoming Executive Director Lee Spiegel has run a CSA through Pulaski Grow and has experience doing youth training. And Beans and Rice has been doing reclaimed food distribution to underserved folks in the New River Valley since 2009. Our board has already done past analysis and strategic review of this program model. Several years ago, we looked at where the gaps were, specifically in Pulaski County. We looked at a food co-op type program called the Middlebury Foods program, but at that time decided that we just didn't have the resources to try to implement that. But this is something we've been thinking about and studying for a long time. We believe there's obviously a program fit to what we do, to the community need and how we do it. We see alignment of these strategic funding priorities, and because of the strategic review, our board, the high level, the work we've done talking with folks and other organizations in the community as part of our executive transition process, we believe we are strategically ready to pivot in this direction. On the other end, we do have limited history sourcing locally produced foods. We see that there are immature funding relationships with health-focused partners, so that has not been an area of funding focus for us in the past. And of course, we have existing operational commitments that also have to be made at the same time, which always can create potential stress implementing. Externally, opportunity-wise, we see COVID-19 disruption as an impetus to reinvent program models and meet needs. We think that organizations that reinvent themselves during this time will position themselves to come out stronger on the other end while serving the community. The CARES Act funding availability creates a potential one-time opportunity to create something with a lasting impact. We see this program model filling an unmet long-term community need. The proximity to the Southwest Virginia farmers market wholesale warehouse is an asset, as well as our proximity to Cana's Produce Alley on the other side of the Blue Ridge gives us access, especially in the startup phase, to a potentially strong place to source local produce. On the threats ends, just the agricultural environment of the New River Valley and Pulaski County really limits the fresh produce availability. Our high altitude, short growing season, clay and rocky soil has made grazing livestock more historically relevant here than row cropping. We have an immature local food system here in the New River Valley. We see that the low to moderate income adoption of the fresh food ethos is also immature, as folks are used to convenience foods, packaged foods, and don't always know how to prepare fresh and healthy food in order to actually use it and bring it to their dinner tables. COVID-19 disruption is obviously also a threat because there are a lot of risk and uncertainties that we can't plan for. And then, of course, the expedited CARES Act funding timeline creates an accelerated timeline to try to implement this. But we think looking at all of this, looking at the strengths, weakness, opportunities, threats, there's ways to cover them, and that this model that's been designed by the team of Lee Spiegel, Beans and Rice Inc.'s executive director, who is incoming, myself, Eric Busey, as the outgoing executive director, and Jill Williams, Calfee Community and Cultural Center's executive director, is a promising practice to meet these needs. So we look forward to providing this more information to the county and figuring out how we might be able to implement a mobile food market to help bring those local flavors and continue to deliver those local flavors to Pulaski County residents now and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic.